3, 2, 1. Okay.
And all security professionals say, Amen. Now, in the last part of that joke, there is this statement about people outside the organisation, outside your company. And the problem is that we have to figure out a better way of managing third-party risk management. What I'm specifically referring to is the work that we've done over the years to look at organisations and their security and internal controls around their enterprise applications, particularly applications that are in scope for financial reporting compliance. So think of Sarbanes-Oxley, etc. And we get called in to help organisations monitor and assess the efficiency, the efficacy of their security, and to help make recommendations as to how they can improve them. Part of that process is evaluating things like privileged users, IT users, the typical users who know everything about the application and also have what we would call keys to the kingdom. Now, what you would not expect in that statement is that quite often we see third parties having the same level of access as those internal privileged users. Now, a few years ago, we were working with a healthcare organisation and we'd gone through all this process of establishing what their employees and to some degree their contractors could do inside some of these in-scope applications. So we were looking at the financials and how we put controls around, those particular applications. And then we got on to a particular user account in the system. And as we went through the process of working with the client, we established that this user account was being used by a third party organization that was there to provide sort of system administration, sysadmin type functionalities to this particular customer. And so we then started to delve down into this particular account. And first of all, it was a generic account. It didn't have a name like Bob or Fred. It was a generically named user account. Now, of course, the next question you got to ask is, well, who has access to this account? And that's where things got interesting, because it turned out that 70, and that's a 7 and a 0, individuals within this third-party organisation had access to this singular account within their enterprise application. Now, I don't need to tell you what kind of dangers that brings. This account had access to everything within the system. It had God mode, let's call it. And so this user could do whatever they wanted to, update any transaction, change the configuration, and this was all within the production environment. Yeah, a third-party organisation that went through a stringent evaluation and risk assessment, and once they were inside the environment, their access was given based on the need to meet certain SLAs, service level agreements. So being able to get into production at 3 a.m, resolve an issue, it's year end, books are being closed, etc, etc. And how do you do that if you don't have the security to get in and access these applications? In another example, we worked with an organisation that was using an archiving solution. And that archiving solution had a named user account tied to it. Again, it was not a named user, it wasn't Bob or Fred, it was a generic user account. And again, that archiving solution had access to everything within the system and was not being treated as a privileged account in the way that the password should be kept, changed, that kind of thing. We talk about that as like a break glass solution. Now again, you have to ask, why does an archiving solution need to have access to everything in production? Now there has to be a balance here. You simply cannot justify having third parties having keys to the kingdom access within not only your applications but within production environments without some form or level of accountability. Now in that particular case, and in your particular case, if this is the issue, there are a number of ways you could tackle this. Number one, probably a good idea to give all of those 70 individuals their own named user accounts so that they have accountability within the application. Number two, the question is, do they need access to everything at all times of the day? For some, there comes a trade-off in terms of, well, I want them to have access to everything, but perhaps what we could do is put this privileged account into some kind of vault. Solutions like CyberArk are very good at this, but what we should do is restrict their access so they can't just get in at any time and access whatever they want, but it should be tied to like a ticket, maybe like a system ticket, an upgrade, an update, whatever it happens to be, so that we could justify their access at any given point in time, and we can measure what it is that they did. Did they go in and do the things that they needed to do, update the ticket, close the ticket, and then their access be removed? Those questions are a lot easier to answer than just, hey, do what you want 24/7. And the other alternative, of course, is to start to think about what it is that these users, these third parties, should be doing and restricting their access. That is a fair question to ask. And this goes beyond those, and I don't want to call them simple, but I've seen a lot of very simple third-party risk assessments. This goes well beyond that, because now we're talking about intention, right? When you get into our environment, Mr. or Mrs. Third Party, what is it that you're actually going to be doing? What level of access is it that you need within the system? And so those are perfectly valid questions. And then once you get that answer, it's going to make whatever solution you put in place, be it a break glass solution or just better security, you can then start to think about how you can better monitor these third-party integrations and reduce the risk to your organization. So as an action, if you want to do one thing from this video, go to your applications team and ask for a list of all the third parties that are touching, integrating, accessing your enterprise applications, and as a critical measure, those that are touching anything to do with financial reporting, and ask what third parties do we have accessing these systems and applications. And from there, you can start to have that conversation. Well, what is their level of access? And does that meet our criteria for access within the system? Like I say, over the years, we've spent a lot of time looking at what employees can do, and third parties have more often than not been overlooked and treated as though having access to everything is perfectly fine. And I would argue, and I'm sure you would too, that that's just not okay.